Next up, we got Insurgency Sandstorm. I think it's called Gunplay. I think this is the one though. It don't say the. Hold on, let me see. Make sure. I think this is the one though. Hold on. Cause they have a lot of them. I don't know. Like, should I just watch this one? Cause somebody requested this video, y'all. Somebody requested this video. Gunplay Insurgency Sandstorm by it says by this is it. Okay, bet. All right, hey, it worked out. All right, so we got Gunplay Insurgency Sandstorm by Clue. You feel me? This is a PC game. I guess it's coming out on console in a couple months or something like that. So, hey, you feel me? I'll definitely play all games, all type of games. I'm very widespread of video games, sports games, Call of Duty, anything. And I'm always, the best. But hey, we ain't gonna get into that. Let's see what it is. Time. Before we get into the video, we 80 subs. No, we 90 subs from 1K. You feel me? At 910, I think. Well, 910. So, y'all hit that sub button. You feel me? Almost there. You know what I'm saying? Episode 4.
Insurgency Sandstorm is a multiplayer, competitive, and co-op first-person shooter, developed by New World Interactive and published by Focus Home Interactive. Released 2018. Sequel to 2014's Insurgency, Sandstorm seeks to provide realistic gameplay, strategic teamwork, and authentic weapon handling. But
why not die?
Something a bit more accessible. These elements combine to create a tactical experience ripe with fast-paced, quick time-to-kill moments of high tension and satisfying combat. And if there's one thing that Insurgency Sandstorm excels at, it's gunplay.
Damn. Okay, buddy.
Insurgency Sandstorm, anyone can die in one shot. Ballistics are fairly realistic, so even if somebody does have body armor equipped, it's still super easy to drop them. But of course, that goes both ways.
This giving me this game giving me what's that game called? Y'all know what Rainbow Six Siege. Y'all know that game? They gave me this vibe. Rainbow Six Siege.
They'll promptly ragdoll onto the ground while attempting to reach for and cover up the bullet wound that you just put in them. And even though the enemy is technically classified as dead, dropping them with a shot to any non-vital region will have them rolling around on the ground in agony, and they won't stop until they either bleed out or you double tap them. This doesn't affect gameplay, but it is a nice realistic touch.
Damn.
However, the impact of the kill shot feels great. Non-lethal shots don't seem to have much of a reaction at all. Other than audio cues and blood effects, enemies barely even flinch when taking a round. But even though I'd love to complain about this more, being a PvP-oriented game, I can understand it. You can't make a player flinch too much when they get shot, or it'll just subtract from their gameplay experience. Same for when playing the co-op mode, since the bots are designed to behave like a player and only carry out actions that a player can execute. It could also be argued that in real-life warfare, people have been known to get shot and not even notice, since the adrenaline kinda takes over. And even though enemies might not have much flinch, there still is plenty of other visual feedback. Blood effects are present in the form of mist, decals, and expanding pools on the ground. All these effects might not be over the top, such as found in a game like last episode's Max Payne 3, but they still feel so brutal in their own way, mostly because of the focus on realism. Your bullets are also capable of dismemberment, which depending on the weapon isn't terribly common.
Damn, he shot his head off.
7.62x51 rifle or higher.
Yeah, shoot his nigga's hands off.
Heads and remove limbs with relative ease. Since there are no hit markers or kill indicators in Sandstorm, the blood and gore effects are actually quite useful to identify kills at a distance. Pulling off difficult long-range shots feels as satisfying as ever. And of course, the environment can break apart pretty nicely as well. Plenty of objects like vases, computers, and windows can be smashed to bits. I would by no means consider the actual environmental destruction on the level of something like a Battlefield game, but it has just enough breakable props to satisfy me. Though I must admit, I would love to be able to level buildings or break open walls in the game. And that you can't destroy walls, you can certainly shoot through them. I haven't done any real extensive testing on penetration, but it seems to work the way that it should. If a surface looks like something you can shoot through with your equipped weapon, you could probably shoot through it. And while we're looking at shooting surfaces, this is a good time to check out the bullet impact decals. Insurgency Sandstorm is one of the few games I've played to have actual 3D bullet impact craters. Not every single surface seems to have them, but most generally do. They look really good, but the only problem I have with them is that they intersect with each other, and are sometimes not perfectly lined up with the surface that they appear on. Accompanying the craters are impact decals or sprays of dirt, debris, and sparks. They all look good, but the spark effects are by far the best. There's the initial flash from the point of impact, but also smaller shards of glowing metal that leave smoke trails and bounce off the environment. So to summarize Sandstorm's impact, it's nothing crazy. No insane ragdolls or massive sprays of blood. But because of its focus on realism, it's satisfying and visually appealing, which is just about all it needs to be for this game. Insurgency's Sandstorm sound design doesn't play around. Just about every sound effect in this game comes together to create an intense and chaotic atmosphere.
Damn!
Gunshots are sharp and aggressive, obviously striving for realism, the same as most other aspects. While the gunshot sounds might not be 100% accurate to their real-life counterparts, they truly capture the feel of firing a rifle. It's violent and metallic, with the bang of each shot, but also the bolt sliding back and shells ejecting.
Bro, I'll be the go at this game.
But of course it doesn't stop there. Reload sounds are also excellent and synced almost perfectly. With of course a couple exceptions. But overall the sounds of replacing magazines and racking bolts or slides are on the same level of quality as the gunshots. While this might all be impressive, what I find more interesting is the deeper attention to some of the smaller details, such as the sound of Velcro opening in a mag pouch while reloading a rifle. Shell casings make different noise based on the type of material they land on. And a very distinct change in sound design between confined rooms and open fields. And that echoing that you hear when outside isn't artificial, it's real. The best indicator of this is the fact that every sound effect, not just gunshots, echoes throughout environments. And of course not only that, but sound also has travel time, like every realism-focused shooter should. And gunfire doesn't just have simple reverb or echo, but the sounds actually roll off of distant hills the way they would in a mountainous area. And finally, the sound effect that is probably most responsible for making gunfights so intense is the sound of bullets cracking by. Being on the receiving end of gunfire in Sandstorm is honestly kind of terrifying. Even after all my time playing it, I still tense up when I'm pinned down by enemy combatants lighting up my cover. It's probably one of the most realistic depictions of a bullet's supersonic crack. All the elements here combine into an excellent, authentic sound design that makes Sandstorm an absolute joy to listen to. There's a good chance that if you've heard of the Insurgency series, you've heard about its weapon animations, and that is for good reason. Almost every single animation of the game is done with a smoothness and fluidity unlike anything I've ever seen in any other video game to date. So this section of the video is definitely going to be a lot longer than the others. Starting with the most prevalent, the reload animations. They are done with an absurd attention to detail. Every little part of your weapon moves the way that it should. For starters, if we look at the Mark 18, you'll notice that when changing mags, your character will move their finger and press the mag release, which is animated on both sides. Then, when inserting a new mag, the mag release quickly pops open while the new mag snaps into place. And when reloading from an empty magazine, your character will turn the gun on its side, press the bolt release, and watch to make sure a new round is successfully chambered. And in the intro sequence of a game, you'll insert a magazine and use the charging handle to chamber a round since the bolt was previously closed. Adjusting your fire selector is also properly animated, with your character's finger physically pushing it up or down to cycle between semi and fully auto. This is some of the most realistic weapon handling that I have ever seen. Moving on to the AKM, you'll notice it includes most of the same details, such as an animated mag release and fire selector. But this is also a good time to mention that every magazine-fed weapon in the game has 2 different styles of reload animations. One slow to conserve your loaded magazine, and one fast to drop the loaded magazine but reload significantly faster. This is much better for high-intensity situations. Pressing R once will reload slow, and double tapping it will reload fast. It also helps that reloads are staged, meaning if that you are interrupted while swapping mags, you can continue the animation from where you left off. And though weapons like shotguns don't have multiple reload animations, since they reload using individual shells, they still look just as good as the rest. Same goes for bolt-action rifles that don't support magazines.
This shit look real, I ain't gonna lie.
On about the specific details of each weapon, but we'd be here all day. I'll just say now that all of them look amazing. There is no doubt that the reload animations in this game are some of the best.
I like that gun.
However, as much as I do adore them, I can't help but think they don't feel perfect in this game. Sandstorm is fast-paced and intense. You're in danger at all times.
A pistol out,
sound
imagine.
design and voice acting make it clear that your character is under constant heavy stress. But the slow and precise reload animations don't really convey that sense of urgency. Kind of feels like casual Friday at the range. And while the fast reloads do a much better job at conveying urgency than the slow reloads, they still both suffer from the same issue. And it's not about the speed of the animations, just the way in which they are animated. If Sandstorm's reloads were just a bit more intense, I think it would have found the perfect middle ground. And even though I am complaining about the reload animations, I still truly think they are some of the best in existence, surpassing countless other AAA releases with over 100 times the budget. But I'm not going to spend any more time on that topic than I need to. There's already been plenty of talk by many people about the reload animations of this game. But what I don't see mentioned nearly as common are the recoil animations. They are actually some of the best recoil animations that I've seen in a while. I always praise a game's animations when they manage to appear smooth and seamless, but Sandstorm just takes it to a different level. There are no cuts or skipped frames during recoil. Basically, in an effort to make the recoil of their weapons seem more aggressive, or just because of a lack of skill in animation, many games have abrupt recoil that jolts back and forth with seemingly no frames in between. This, at least in my opinion, only achieves the opposite. It severely detracts from the quality of its gunplay. But this is just not the case in Sandstorm. The animations remain perfectly smooth, while instead, the entire camera violently shakes radially around the center of your screen. Looking at this normally seems a bit strange, but in action it works fantastically to add to the feeling of power without compromising animation quality. This is actually a fairly common method seen in many other first-person shooters. But the real reason that Sandstorm's recoil is so convincing is that your weapon moves fluidly in multiple directions. If we go frame by frame, we'll see that right when the gun is fired, the front of the rifle goes up and the back goes down. And as the front comes back down towards center, the back then goes up. The rifle moves up and down kind of like a seesaw on its center of gravity. At the same time as this, the weapon also exhibits horizontal recoil. The intensity of both horizontal and vertical recoil depend on the weight of the weapon and its caliber. Recoil is actually numerized in the loadout selection screen, so that can make it a bit easier to measure. And this system works just the same in fully auto. The best part being that the weapon does not need to return to the center of your screen for the next shot, meaning that wherever the gun is pointed when a round is fired, that's where the animation begins. So you can use the free-floating aim to point your gun anywhere while spraying rounds, and it will still always appear just as seamless. I've seen a decent amount of people complain that the recoil is too intense in this game, but I've found that it's pretty much perfectly accurate to real life. If you just keep your mouse immobile and hold down the trigger, sure, your weapon is going to kick up into the sky. But that's exactly what would happen if you didn't fight the recoil. If you move your mouse down to compensate, recoil looks and feels incredibly realistic, especially when compared side by side to real-life footage. But this has all been while hip firing. If you actually aim down sights while firing, recoil works a little bit differently. Your weapon is braced tighter, so there's much less movement. Recoil is reduced pretty significantly, and while your sight does jitter around, it generally stays very close to center, so most of the recoil is handled by screen shake rather than weapon sway. But of course, if you're trying to make your weapons feel powerful, you also need good muzzle flashes.
Muzzle flashes.
Originally, this section of the video was going to be on the surprising realism of the muzzle flashes. However, this script was written and recorded about 6 months prior to being uploaded. At some point during that period, an update was released that for some reason changed muzzle flashes for several weapons, making them incorrect. So instead of a few minutes of outdated information, I'll just show you what they used to look like, and what they look like now. Most weapons are still bright, but the flashes for AR rifles no longer correspond with the shape of the muzzle device. Honestly, it's hardly even noticeable during gameplay, but I am a bit confused as to why this change was made. Hopefully it does get fixed in the near future. Anyways, back to the video. And finally, there's also a small spark shooting at the barrel and the ejection port. Clearly a ton of thought was put into making Sandstorm's animations as realistic as possible. My only complaint is that there isn't really much smoke left behind when firing. A lot of real guns leave behind some pretty big clouds that can obscure your vision.
Oh
I think
my
having that in
god.
this game would make things a bit more interesting and maybe even encourage semi-auto fire a bit more. But overall, Sandstorm's animations are still mind-blowingly good. I hope to see more games in the future following the footsteps of its animation team. Really heavy. In reality, reality, it's not so easy to keep a rifle constantly locked to your shoulder and holding steady pointed straight ahead. Your weapon is going to move around and sway quite a bit. One of the first things you may actually notice about Insurgency Sandstorm's gunplay is that the weapons aren't locked to the center of your screen. Instead, it has a free-floating aim system that allows the rifle to wander. This makes the weapon handling feel fairly natural. I don't think that the system would work in every FPS, but it feels right at home in Sandstorm. Now, you may already know that weight and animation are tied closely together, since the biggest indicator of a weapon's weight is how it is animated.
Damn.
Animations work wonderfully.
I think a DPI on a
If
million.
you look at a small, relatively light weapon like an MP7, and compare its handling to a heftier weapon like a Mark 17, you'll see the difference in weight between large and small guns as clear as day. Subtle movements like slight weapon shake when racking a bolt or loading a magazine make them feel all the more tangible. Weapon movement while walking and looking around also appears very natural. Sprinting is just as good, but the weapon animations while sprinting actually change based on whether you're playing in normal or hardcore mode. This always felt like kind of a pointless change, but I guess since hardcore mode drastically reduces player movement speed to a more realistic pace, they wanted the weapons to feel even heavier as well. I think that the only thing that would have actually helped here is more head bob. Might sound strange that I'm complaining the game doesn't induce enough nausea, but this would have made movement with weapons feel a bit more cumbersome. Idle animations also pop up from time to time when you aren't moving that depict your character inspecting your rifle or adjusting their hands a bit to get a better grip. One more little touch of realism to portray discomfort from the weapon's weight. And while of course animations help to illustrate weight, there is an actual weight system that affects gameplay. When you're in the loadout menu, you'll notice in the top left there's a weight percentage bar. As the weight increases, you'll lose stamina, movement speed, and ADS speed. Pulling out an M82A1 already feels like lifting Thor's hammer, but the added weight system that affects player movement forces you to actually put thought into the weight of the items you equip. If you need to quickly move from cover to cover, you don't want to get caught out in the open because you're stuck at a snail's pace due to the entire armory on your back. But at the same time, going fast and light means less ammo, less body armor, and possibly a worse weapon. It's a bit of a risk versus reward system, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I almost always find myself near max weight. Now, all things considered, there isn't a ton to talk about in terms of weight, but all the weapons feel varied, and just as heavy or light as they should. It's just the kind of varied arsenal that a good first-person shooter needs. Pretty much every game handles accuracy mechanics a little bit differently. In some games, bullets come from your eyes and fly straight ahead. In others, bullet trajectories are based on the exact position of your barrel to attain realism. I
gotta download that new Call of Duty Vanguard real quick.
Varying based on whether you're hip firing.
About to make a video on that.
Starting with hip firing, this is where realism comes into play. No matter how the weapon is positioned or where it is aiming, bullets will always hit whatever surface is first along its trajectory, leaving the barrel. This is much easier to see when using a laser attachment. But when aiming down sights, the bullets don't come from the barrel. Instead, they come out of your eyes. It's rather bizarre switching between the two accuracy mechanics on the fly, but when actually used in combat, I can see why this decision was made. Yes, Sandstorm does have extremely realistic weapon handling, but it's still a fast-paced game and you're on the move pretty often. Because of this, it's much preferable to not have bullets get blocked by environmental objects, especially since a single shot can be the difference between victory and loss. With this system, it means that while ADSing, if you can see your target, you can shoot your target. You don't need to worry about your bullets getting caught on several millimeters of wall sticking out in front of you.
I was wondering if they had that little peak thing out here.
Another thing that I appreciate about Sandstorm is that bullet deviation isn't artificial. Your rounds will pretty much always go exactly where you're aiming. The challenge is, of course, quickly acquiring targets. Since recoil is so intense, it's also difficult to keep that crosshair or reticle trained exactly where you want it, so semi-automatic fire is encouraged, especially since hitboxes are very unforgiving. You need to be dead on target for your rounds to actually connect, otherwise you'll just end up giving them a haircut. This also means it's generally best to aim center mass, rather than go for constant headshots. The one thing I've noticed that makes target acquisition challenging is that when you aim down sights, you don't aim where your weapon was initially pointing, but instead always to the center of your screen. Most games with a free-floating aim system work the same way, but this can occasionally become an issue when trying to watch multiple angles at once. If you're pointing your weapon towards a door, then you ADS to fire on an enemy, your weapon might suddenly be aiming slightly off target. It's not the hardest thing in the world to account for, but still, even after all my time playing this game, I anticipate ADSing to line up with where my gun was actually pointed. It's gotten me killed a few times for sure. But as far as bullet trajectories go, it should be noted that Sandstorm has bullet travel time and bullet drop. However, it doesn't exactly work the way you might think. Basically, to make extremely close quarters combat feel more responsive, the game combines hit scan and projectile-based accuracy systems. When you fire a shot, the bullet travels the first several meters instantly. Past a certain distance, the projectile is then simulated with its proper velocity. This system ensures that there isn't any feeling of delay when firing, and the gunplay feels snappy. Plus, at such a close distance, even if projectiles were simulated, you wouldn't really notice because of how quick it's all moving. And since maps are designed to keep engagement distances relatively short, it all fits in just fine. So Sandstorm combines multiple accuracy mechanics surprisingly well to create fluid, responsive, and overall incredibly fun gunplay. Insurgency Sandstorm has to be one of my favorite competitive shooters of all time. In several ways, the gunplay is simply unmatched by other games. I had already been playing this game for a while before I started working on this video, but after spending all this time with it, I began to appreciate it even more. Between the excellent sound design, stunning animations, and visceral gunfights, there's a lot to be seen, especially if you're a fan of fast-paced yet tactical gameplay. This certainly isn't a game that I'll toss aside now that I'm done with the video. You'll definitely catch me loading it back up in the near future. So thank you for watching, and if there's any games you want me to tackle in future episodes, please let me know in the comments. But if you're wondering what's in store for episode 5...
Is it? Next time on Gunplay. What is the next video you try to make? Hey man, I did like the game. It's not bad. I don't really play PC game like that because I don't got the best PC to be able to play a game and record at the same time. I gotta buy a bigger, better PC. But you feel me? I definitely could play on my own. You know what I'm saying? Without recording a video. Hey man, y'all like, comment, subscribe. Come show me yet to next man. Follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active at. We're on the grind at 1K man. I'm out.